So, today I'm going to be doing an episode that's a little different where I am going to be answering questions that you've sent in to me. So, I sent out an email, I asked on my Instagram and on Facebook and on YouTube as well for your questions related to high functioning anxiety, mental health, work life balance, and personal development in general. And so, I'm going to be addressing some of these questions today. Some of these may also be questions that I have received in the past that seem to be topics of interest. So I hope that you find this episode helpful and that it maybe answers some of the questions that you have. Hey, Tati here. Welcome to Calmly Coping. I'm a licensed therapist and coach specializing in high functioning anxiety. I help high achievers overcome anxiety, stress, and overwhelm so they can finally stop overthinking everything. Thank you so much for tuning in. So, the first question that I received is from Donna, and Donna asks, what is the connection between high functioning anxiety and depression? So, this is an excellent question. And in general, there is a connection between anxiety and depression. And that is because when it comes to anxiety, it tends to be that worrying, thinking of the worst case scenario, looking out for danger. And this can sometimes result in and be related to depression because depression is often focusing on the negative, feeling hopeless or avoidant or feeling a loss of interest in things that you may have enjoyed in the past. And if you think about with anxiety, that fear of things can turn into avoidance. And avoidance of things, let's say if you are staying home because you're afraid of going out of the house or afraid of socializing, can turn into depression because you are potentially isolating yourself or not doing things that tend to result in an improved mood, like getting out in the sunlight or spending time with others. Now, in this case, I'm just talking about this specific avoidance that might occur. Let's say if you are afraid of or anxious about leaving the home or socializing, but there can, of course, be many different types of anxieties that can occur. But in general, there is a relationship between the types of thinking. Oftentimes, there are very similar types of thinking in both anxiety and depression that can just feed into each other. Like worries about, what if I'm not going to be successful in the future can turn into then negative thoughts about yourself, like there's something wrong with me or I'm never going to achieve the things that I want in life. That type of negative thinking can turn into depression. Now, there is also the biological component, whereas, both anxiety and depression can result when you have a genetic predisposition, meaning that, there's something within your genes that could be passed on from parents and can also be learned that then results in you being more likely to struggle with anxiety and depression. So there can certainly be a connection, there can certainly be similarities, and it's important to just be aware of. If you notice that you're getting to a point of feeling really down and feeling unmotivated to do things that you used to enjoy doing, or thinking bad thoughts about yourself or the world or others around you, or just a general mood where you're feeling down, maybe you're crying a lot, that could potentially be signs of depression. And in that case, it's always a great idea to seek out the support of a mental health professional and to seek out support from friends and family if that's the right choice for you, if you feel comfortable doing so. So the next question that I got was from Tyler. So Tyler asked me a bunch of questions, and I want to focus on what Tyler said when it came to career moves. And it seems like Tyler's going through a lot of transitions now, dealing with their own business stuff, moving into their first apartment, traveling, and having inner insecurities. So when it comes to being in periods of transition, so you're talking about career moves, you're talking about moving, you're talking about business stuff. So without knowing the specifics, in general, anytime where you're in a period of having things changing or you don't feel settled in a certain area of your life, so maybe it's a move, maybe it's a career change, maybe it's even a schedule change, then there's going to be feelings of stress that may come up, even if it's a positive change, because we are all used to the familiarity and comfort of being in our comfort zones. So anytime we go outside of that comfort zone, then it's going to, of course, be uncomfortable. And so you may notice that when you're in these periods of change or transition, then that might make you more sensitive to things that normally you aren't sensitive to, or it may just feel like things are more difficult, or you might be more prone to struggling with stress and anxiety. And I like to think of the fact that, this is just important to have that awareness so that once you have that awareness, you can recognize, okay, I'm going through a period of change and I know that change is hard. And so it's going to feel like things are more difficult. And that's just part of the process. And as long as I can remember that and remind myself of that, then I'm able to notice it when it comes up and not get stuck into it and not feed into it and think that things are going to feel this way forever. Because one of the most challenging things with struggling with stress and anxiety or negative thoughts is this feeling that you're going to feel this way forever and things are never going to get better. And, I like to just think of having that reminder that you're not going to feel this way forever. This is a temporary period of life. Even if you have tons of changes going on at the same time, which is what I've been going through myself, at some point things are going to ease up and maybe it's going to be a different type of change or a less stressful change or whatever it is. But the way that you're feeling right now isn't permanent. And, what can help is to look at things that you can use. Maybe it's seeking out more support from others or doing some more work on your mental health, like journaling, touching base with how you're feeling, meditation, exercise, or any of those healthy coping skills that help you to take care of yourself. Because those are going to be even more valuable and more important during these times of change. So the next question is from Cedric. Cedric has two questions. So the first question is, now that I'm able to have more control over panic and anxiety, is there a chance that I'll relapse back if I don't continue to practice mindfulness? That's a great question, Cedric. And I like to think about it like exercise. So if you think about it, if you, let's say, decide I'm going to exercise for a month and then you stop, that month of exercise is going to be very important and helpful for your body, but it's not going to carry you into perpetuity. You're not going to never be able to or never have to exercise again. And the same applies for mindfulness. So you're talking about this chance that you'll relapse back if you don't continue to practice mindfulness. There is the chance that you may slip back into old patterns and behaviors. However, the difference now is that you probably have more tools and more skills to help you manage the stress that does come up differently. However, it's still important to practice that mindfulness and whatever that looks like for you consistently so that you can have the benefits from it. So, think about it like taking a shower every day or brushing your teeth. Like these are things that are important to take care of our bodies. And in the same way, practicing those things that are important for your mental health, be it mindfulness or other practices that help you, like journaling, those are things that are also valuable and important to do consistently to ensure you're caring for yourself. That doesn't mean that you have to be perfect with things. That doesn't mean that you have to meditate or practice mindfulness like 7 days a week and never miss and be completely rigid with it. It does mean that, it's important to find a rhythm that works for you and to be flexible and be compassionate when you're not able to get to that practice. So even if it's just you're really busy and you're taking 5 minutes to practice mindfulness a few times a week, I like to think that that's better than nothing because you're still practicing that because you know that it's helpful for you and you're not being so rigid and flexible that it's then becoming like another task off your to-do list and becoming more stressful. So the next question from Cedric is that he says that some days feel so good that I'll try to accomplish things that I regret for the following days, like starting a project. Any advice on managing positive energy and how that helps with work-life balance? Now that it appears I have recovered, I'm getting asked to do a lot more things at work, but I'm often hesitant to accept since I know this brain is still a bit of a work in progress. So, Cedric, all of our brains are a work in progress. We never reach a point where we're done and we've gotten to this kind of like nirvana of personal development or self-actualization. So you're definitely not alone in feeling that way. Now, when it comes to what you're talking about with like some days feel good, so you're trying to accomplish more, but then you regret it the following days. I'm assuming because maybe you've done too much in one day. And so, you want to know how to manage that positive energy and still have balance. So what I think is a good rule of thumb, and I actually learned this in the book Effortless by Greg McKeown. I never know how to pronounce his name right, so hopefully I said it right. But he asks this question. When you're thinking of what you want to do in a day, don't do more in a day than you can recover from before tomorrow. So essentially what that means is looking at, if you have a big burst of energy and you're like, I'm really motivated, I want to work until midnight so I can get this done since I have all this energy right now. If doing that is then going to cut into your sleep, it's going to result in you feeling less energized tomorrow and then less ready to approach the day, then maybe that's not the best idea. But if you're able to do that and like you have the day off tomorrow and you can rest and take it easy, then, maybe that's okay for you to do. So I think that it can help to just go back to that question and assess, when I have these bursts of positive energy and I feel motivated to do things, is it possible for me to do this and still feel recovered before tomorrow, depending on what you have to do the next day? So I think that can be a great rule of thumb. So that doesn't mean that you need to be super rigid and, have the same schedule every single day. You can still go with when you're feeling more energized. However, in the long run, I also think it's important to have some sort of structure so that you're not constantly going on just like working when you feel motivated and energized, but you're still having some sort of consistency and structure to follow when it comes to your work schedule. Next question is from Araceli. She asks about the concept between hustle culture and balance. So, how to be okay with balance in a hustle culture world. And she's asking to dive deeper into the acceptance of balance when you're an entrepreneur and everyone around you has adopted this lifestyle of hustle culture and you choose not to. So I think this is a great question. And that concept, the societal pressure of hustle culture can definitely be far reaching. And, it's present in our corporate cultures and workplaces and also in places like social media. And if you listen to other entrepreneurs that follow this, it's this idea that you constantly need to be working and doing and pushing harder and not a focus on taking time for rest and taking time to care for your mental health. And so I think that you can absolutely work hard and do a lot and be productive, especially as an entrepreneur. That can be necessary in the first few months to years of your business and of whatever it is that you're working on, while still creating time for balance. And it's all about checking into what works best for you. So the concept of hustle culture is this idea of constantly needing to be busy and working. And so you can be working hard and working towards your goals and still making time for rest. Because the issue is when you're constantly pushing forward and pushing harder, then you're going to reach a point of burnout, especially when you struggle with anxiety and high functioning anxiety, because that time to care for your mental health is essential. Honestly, it's essential for everybody, but things are going to become even more difficult when you're prone to anxiety. So finding what that balance looks like for you. I think this can apply to the question that I just answered with Cedric, and assessing if you feel like you're in a stage where you have the energy to work and you have all these ideas coming to you, then definitely go for it and do that work and put in the effort, and then just making sure that you're balancing that with recovery time. So there's no perfect formula or perfect schedule if that doesn't seem to fit for you, or if you're in a place where you're in a generative phase and wanting to come up with a lot of ideas or spending more time in your business than potentially other resources. It can help to look at the fact that hustle culture is a lie. Unless you have no other responsibilities in your life and unless you want to completely sacrifice your well-being. And that's my personal opinion. But, based on my experience and my expertise, I wholeheartedly stand by that. And so I think it's more about finding what is that balance like for you. You don't have to sacrifice your ambition or work less hard on things in order to take care of yourself. And so finding what does that look like for you? And sometimes that means focusing on only a few priorities at a time and just being realistic with what you can devote your time and energy towards. So, another question that I received in the past from Cecilia. So, she said, I have high functioning anxiety in addition to being a highly sensitive person. Yes, a double burden. Can you develop this issue and give some suggestions on how to deal with these two challenges at the same time? So, if you're not familiar with what being a highly sensitive person is, a highly sensitive person is a term for those who are thought to have an increased or deeper central nervous system sensitivity to physical, emotional, or social stimuli. Some refer to this as having sensory processing sensitivity. So, basically, being a highly sensitive person is a personality trait. So, it's not something that is a mental health disorder or mental illness or means that there's anything wrong with you, but speaks to a part of the population who may be just more sensitive to things. If you find that you tend to be somebody who is a deep thinker, who might be more sensitive to the emotions of people around you, maybe you're sensitive to loud noises or a lot of stimuli, like going to parties with a lot of people. There's so many other things that are involved in being a highly sensitive person. Those are just a few things that come to mind for me now. And this, in combination with high functioning anxiety, can be an interesting combination. Now, this is personally me. I consider myself to be a highly sensitive person. There's a test on it that you can take online, and I'm going to leave a link in the description and in the show notes so that you can check it out yourself. But, I think that when you're struggling with both, it can be important to first have that piece of awareness. So, what does that look like for you? How does high functioning anxiety affect you in your day to day? And how does being a highly sensitive person affect you in your day to day? Is it possible that when you go to parties or events, or maybe if you are around people where they're struggling a lot and you're taking on their emotions, or, whatever other situations might come up where you're feeling more sensitive and potentially leading into a place of anxiety, it can help to look at how does that affect you and what does that look like in your day to day, and also tease out what is the difference between the two? What do they feel like and how do they feel differently? Now, for me personally, I know that anxiety is very much in my body, and it will come up as like tension in my chest or in my throat, quickened heart rate, more tension maybe in my shoulders and my back, and a lot of negative and worrisome thoughts. Whereas when I'm overstimulated because of the sensitivity, that kind of feels like there's a fogginess in my brain or a scatterbrained feeling, or like, it's just too much for me to handle and I'm feeling overwhelmed. Now, that's what it's like for me personally. It may be different and feel different for you personally. So I think that's a great place to start and to look at what does that look like and feel like for you? How are they different? So then you can assess, because they may need different ways of coping. And so when it comes to the anxiety, then it may look like practicing more calming relaxation techniques, challenging those negative and anxious thoughts that are coming up, practicing mindfulness. And when it comes to being a highly sensitive person, then it may look like, maybe you need more time to recharge or by yourself, maybe assessing before you go to an event or something that could be potentially too much going on for you. Is this something that you want to set boundaries for yourself around, or other changes to adjust for and to protect your own personal energy? Now, that's just the first steps for this topic. If this is something you want me to dive deeper on, then I can definitely make a whole podcast episode on it. If you're interested in that, then send me a DM on Instagram at TatianaGLPC, and I will definitely make that. Now, the last question is from Assassin's Killer on YouTube. Assassin's Killer said, I can't concentrate on my present, always anxious about the future happenings and disagreeing with my peers, though they are right, I can't compromise my inner self, and always finding exact circumstances to start new things. Nobody knows I got this much in my mind, though I tell them they don't get how it is very serious to me. Even when I go to a movie, I'm not enjoying finding flaws and thinking more logically to ruin the moment. So it sounds like from what you're describing, it's a lot of having to do with thinking about the future, struggling with procrastinating, and how negatively thinking affects your enjoyment of the present. And so this does sound challenging. And so what I would suggest is, part of it is also, it seems like, not feeling like your peers understand you and like they can understand what you're going through. And that can feel really isolating. So I think what can help is, maybe trying to find somebody that can understand what you're going through, whether that is in our Facebook community, Calmly Coping. That's my free private community. Maybe you can find some similarity in what you're struggling with in there. And, just also recognizing that you're not alone in feeling that way. And even if the people in your personal life don't understand how you're feeling, that doesn't make it any less serious or any less real. And then practically, I think what would be helpful is to take steps to start to address these things one at a time. So when it comes to thinking a lot about the future, what can really help is a mindfulness practice. And so whether that looks like yoga, meditation, or just taking a walk and tuning in with your five senses and how you're feeling, those kinds of things can really help you to practice that attention of bringing your focus back into the present. And in the long run, that's going to help you recognize when you're thinking about the future and bring your attention back. And when it comes to struggling with procrastinating and negative thinking, what can help is to have that awareness of when those negative thoughts come up, not attaching to them, and seeing if you can just witness them as an objective observer and see, when these negative thoughts come up, are they actually true? When you're finding flaws in this movie, is this something that is helpful? Is this something that is contributing to me enjoying this movie more, or, enjoying my experience, or is it just stressing me out more? And so when you can ask that question, that differentiation of identifying those negative thoughts and then asking, are these thoughts helpful? I think that's a really great place to start. So these were some excellent questions for today. Thank you so much for everybody who submitted a question. And if you have questions yourself, then you can send me those questions on Instagram by DMing me at TatianaGLPC. You can also submit your questions in our free Facebook community, Calmly Coping. I'm going to leave a post there when this episode comes out, asking you for your insight on these questions that I discussed today. If you can relate to any of them, if you have any tips for any of the people that asked the questions so we can continue the conversation there, you can join for free by going to calmlycoping.com/group. While you wait for next week's episode, I have other episodes about decreasing anxiety, adopting a healthy mindset, and managing your time and energy. You can check out those episodes here. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and until next time, be calm.